I want to obviously kick off with the Sunday Mail story. Now, you and I had a chat briefly on Sunday morning. The Sunday Mail in particular had been very negative and said some negative things about the survivors of child abuse and said things about it being a fantasy. On Sunday, they talked about the Chief Superintendent of Wiltshire Police. He might be the Chief Constable, Mike Veal. And Mike Veal has said that he absolutely believes those who have come forward to talk about Edward Heath. This has got to be poignant for you, the man who back in 1997, 1998, 7 years before Heath died, named him as a serial child abuser and as a accessory to murder, if not a murderer. A lot of things were said about you over the years for saying that, and here we are now. I know he's dead, and I know there won't be justice for him. Well, maybe there will be somewhere else. You could talk about that, I suppose. But it must be poignant for you. I do believe, knowing you as I do, you get a bit emotional. You've never been selfish. It's never been about you. But you're entitled to get a little bit emotional and say, well, you know, I was telling people that a long time ago.
Yeah, well, I think Heath has probably got a sweat on wherever he is now, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because the man was demonic. And I've had my own experience with him that I talk about in one or two of the books, in a makeup room at Sky News. For people who have not heard the story, before I started meeting people in the 1990s that were telling me about Heath, to the point where it passed my threshold of, hey, this is true. I had an incredible experience with Heath in this makeup room. I was in the Green Party at the time, and it would have been about late 1980s. It was in the European elections. I think it was 1989, when the Green Party out of nowhere suddenly had a lot of votes that it never had before. So I was invited to go on the live results coming in election program on Sky News. And when I arrived, I was met by this lady who took me into the makeup room. And as I walked in, the makeup room door was open to the right. And so when I walked into the room, and the lady said to me, there'll be someone along to, sort you out in a minute, and walked out, I thought I was on my own. So I sat down at the seat, facing the mirror, of course, as they do in these makeup rooms. And something caught my eye to my right, and I turned around, and it was Ted Heath. And Ted Heath was in there waiting to have his makeup taken off because he'd just been interviewed earlier on in the program before the results started coming in. And it was an extraordinary experience, completely new to me. And I didn't know what I was experiencing at the time. In fact, for some time, I didn't talk about it because I thought, well, I didn't talk about it publicly because I thought, did I really experience that? And then pretty soon, as not too many years passed, I came across this phenomenon that I experienced around the world that other people had, many other people had had. And what happened was during this experience, Heath never said anything, not a word. But as I turned, he caught my eye, and I said, all right, mate, as you do. Nice to meet you. And he just turned to me and started looking at me without saying a word. He had an almost inquisitive look on his face, like, what's this sort of thing. And then his eyes went to the top of my head and slowly, all I can say is scanned me down to my feet and then went back up to my head. And when he reached that point, he turned and faced the mirror, completely ignored me after that. And the point was that when this, quote, scanning was going on, his eyes turned completely black. I'm talking about the whites. I'm talking about all of it. They were just black, jet black eyes. And I said to my family when I got home, it was like looking into two black holes. It was, you have eye contact with people. There's a point where you are making contact. But this was like looking through into something else. I had no idea. I can, explain it to myself now. But at the time, of course, you're thinking, what just happened?
Yeah.
And what I was doing was looking through the hologram of Ted Heath into that which is really controlling these people. And it is very black and very demonic. And so years later, having had this experience, and it happened with another politician as well, actually. But Heath was the one I really remember. I then started coming across stories around the world about the black-eyed people. And then I was reading these stories and I was thinking, crikey, that's exactly what I experienced with Heath. What people were describing. And then as we got into the 90s and, the top of my head blew off and, the rest is history period, then I started coming across people through the 1990s who were telling me about Heath and others, but telling me about him and his, not just his pedophilia, but his Satanism. This man was a monumental serial Satanist who is responsible for the death, torture of extraordinary numbers of children. And so when I saw the story on Sunday in the Mail on Sunday about the police chief of Wiltshire saying, or being quoted as saying that he felt that what was being said by the witnesses now talking to the police about their experiences with Heath was 120% true. That was one level of it. But then in the Mail the next day, when they were quoting a source to this inquiry of a group of women who were claiming that their parents were Satanists who ritually sacrificed children, and that Heath was part of that ring, then that absolutely fitted with what I was told 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago.
And these women reported this in 1989 too, didn't they? Sorry, David, go ahead.
What was said by the Mail on Monday was these people, these women are claiming that 16 children were murdered ritually by this ring. Oh my God, that would make them the biggest serial killers. Male, over here.
Yeah.
That is the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg in terms of the numbers of children worldwide who are sacrificed by these crazies. Just take your mind back to what you accept to be true. Oh yes, in the ancient world, yeah, then they were primitive. They used to sacrifice children to the gods. Oh yeah, we know that. They're still doing it. The only thing that happened is it went underground when publicly it became unacceptable. This is the thing, Rich, as I've said many times. The difference between the perception that people are given to download from cradle to grave, the perception of reality, the perception of what's going on in the world is so staggeringly different and myopic compared with what is really happening that journalists can't make that leap. And I do notice, mate, today that the Mail's running a story about grossly unjust fury over police chiefs, Heath abuse claim and all that stuff. I hope that the Wiltshire chief constable, the signs are quite good so far, but I hope that Mike Veal has a large pair, shall we say,
yeah.
Because he's going to come under a lot of pressure, because the last thing that they want to come out is this. Pedophilia is bad enough for them because of what it says about the mentality that we're dealing with. But when you go to the ritual sacrifice of children, drinking their blood and all this outrageous, almost unspeakable, unthinkable horror, then you're into a whole new level. And once this comes out, you see, all bets are off. All perceptions are off. All preconceived ideas have gone about the world and the structures that run the world. They've all gone. Because if these people will do this to children, will they have a problem with 9/11? Will they have a problem with systematically bombing whole countries from the air? No, no, because if you are going to have, and this is important because it opens the door to understanding beyond our usually programmed naivety in terms of what is actually happening. It opens the door to see the kind of mentality and the level and depth of the mentality that's actually behind world events. Because if you have so had your empathy and your capacity for compassion to be deleted to the scale that you would do this to children, then there are no limits to what you will do. So the phrase I hear all the time, they would never do that, that is gone kaput once people perceive the scale of what is happening in terms of people like Heath. So this is important that this comes out. It's important that it's not dropped and allowed to be hidden and brushed aside.
Really important. My interjection was just to mention that the women made the complaints back in 1989, and if anybody thinks that a bunch of women would hold on to a game or a hoax for 30 years nearly, you know, they have another think coming. These women who've come forward again 28, 29 years later are doing so because, you know, in my opinion, they're telling the truth. And I echo, of course, what you said about Mike Veal. He's going to have to hold firm. One or two people have been saying on social media that they'd be worried about him. And while we don't do sensationalism or fear porn here, I understand why people are saying they'd be worried about him. And we're not talking maybe physical harm, but we know that the awful powers behind these things, they can make things happen to people's careers, and we'll have to watch that closely. Do you want to say a final word on that before we move on?
Well, this is, of course, what we've seen from experience, Rich. When genuine police officers were starting to genuinely investigate the allegations and evidence in the Jersey scandal, which also involved Heath, by the way, and his boat, Morning Cloud, then, of course, when they got too close to the truth on Jersey, they were removed. Then you look at the massive scandal waiting to explode in Belgium in the Dutroux case, when that was leading to the rich and famous and the titled in Belgium, thanks to an investigator who was genuinely trying to uncover the truth. And what happened? They manipulated the situation to get rid of him. And who followed? Both of them, people that put the lid on it. So, you know, we need to keep an eye on this and support this guy if he is a genuine man who is going to stand by and seek to establish the truth. Because, like I say, they are desperate that this stuff doesn't come out because it will change perception. It will change perception of possibility, a perception of the world. When this comes out, a prime minister of Britain in front of our eyes, who took us into the what is now the EU, was sacrificing children on an industrial scale, by the way. I mean, where is naivety after that in terms of the world? So they're desperate to keep the lid on this, and we must not allow them to.